Thanks for checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board. If you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like. You can check out all of my work, including the 2022 Rookie Big Board rankings at patreon.com/theFFeducator. This is a Rookie Big Board mailbag episode. I have 6 questions here submitted by the listeners, by the viewers, by the patrons. We're going to dig into 2022 rookie strategy questions. Going to dig in on some individual players here. I'm excited to jump into it. The way the mailbags work here, it's less formal. I have not actually done an outline for this show. I've pulled 6 questions, but I haven't done an outline. It's not going to be in particular notes here. I kind of just want to speak freely and work through my process, and I think having an episode like that every now and then kind of helps get a little bit of insight into the process, just because it feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more of a flow going into that. Now, before we jump into the questions, I want to point out that all the questions for this mailbag were pulled from the Patreon Discord, and you could get access to that Discord at patreon.com/theFFeducator. If you want to submit a question for a future mailbag episode, hoping to do these more consistently, you can continue to put them in the podcast channel, in the Discord, or what you can do is, if you're watching on YouTube, you can drop a comment on the YouTube video and I will pull some questions together here. And as the questions add up, I'll just go ahead and do another mailbag. So hopefully every other week or something along those lines as we lead up to draft season. So let's go ahead and dig into the first question here. I've combined 2 questions submitted through the Patreon Discord, combining William Lawson and Gibson's questions here to ask the important question: should we be concerned about Drake London and David Bell's inability to separate? Now, I think this is a fantastic question to ask because it's something that I have been really particular on over the past couple seasons. When a player cannot consistently separate, for me, before the catch point, that is a legitimate concern. Now, in William brings up 2 really troubling examples of recent years, right? N'Keal Harry and JJ Arcega Whiteside. Both of these players did not show the ability to consistently separate before the catch point in their college film, and it's come back to really hurt them at the next level, right? But William brings up a good point as well. You look at a player like Mike Evans, who's been able to thrive despite not being the most consistent separator before the catch point, right? And so I mentioned in recent year examples, you look at Rashad Bateman. I was lower than most folks on Rashad Bateman, in part because of his inability to consistently separate before the catch point. So when you look at Drake London and David Bell, you're looking at my current wide receivers 4 and 5. Drake London 4, David Bell 5, with the caveat here that the wide receiver rankings are going to move around once we find about landing spots here, and of course can factor in NFL draft capital. However, when honing in on these 2 players in particular, I have to tell you that I think it is a legitimate concern for David Bell. I think David Bell, and let me start with Drake London, because I think talking about David Bell will make a little bit more sense when I start by talking of a prospect for me. Originally, very high in my Devy rankings, going back to 2019 here, 2020. Drake London originally very high in my Devy rankings. I watched that 2020 tape, and I took a little bit of a step back, and it was because exactly what William and Gibson are asking about, that ability to separate the wide receiver position. The 2020 tape, I didn't see that as much from Drake London, and it got me a little concerned. However, Drake London, when flipping on his 2021 tape, slight improvement with separation. I do still think it's a legitimate concern. However, what Drake London has that David Bell does not have is an X factor that offsets, that I can legitimately project to offset that inability to separate before the catch point, which is that Drake London is extremely good at separating at the catch point. And now here's a big difference. If you compare Drake London to Rashad Bateman, right, and why I'm less worried about Drake London compared to how worried I was about Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman was physical enough, had a big enough frame to go up and embody Big Ten defensive backs. But we knew that he was not going to be able to project at that same level of dominance at the catch point. He wasn't going to be able to consistently put up those highlight type catches because his frame was just naturally not going to hold up against the physicality, the length, the size of NFL defensive backs, the technical prowess of NFL defensive backs. However, Drake London, being a big-bodied, ultra-athletic wide receiver, does have the ability to offset that. He wins above the rim. He wins at the catch point, and he has fantastic body positioning. And I think that's really key, that body positioning, having an understanding not only of having a large frame, but having an understanding of how to use your large frame, I think is going to help Drake London. So because of London's X factor ability to separate at the catch point, I'm less worried about his ability to separate before the catch point, and that's why I think, in Williams' question of is he closer to Arcega Whiteside or is he closer to Mike Evans, I think he's going to be closer to Mike Evans. However, David Bell, this is an interesting one. I got to tell you, I'm right in the middle right now with David Bell because I watched his 2020 tape, was not excited. I thought that he was somebody that was completely overrated. Very highly favored in the analytics community. I thought he was overrated. I watched David Bell's 2021 tape, and he reeled me right back in. When you look at his ability to route run, he does not consistently separate. There is improvement. There is improvement in his 2021 tape compared to 2020. However, he runs a good route tree. He runs combination routes well. He has a nice comeback route, which I really do enjoy. However, how many times he's going to be running comeback routes in the NFL, I'm not really sure. He runs a good slant route, and he does separate well off the line of scrimmage on his slant route. And so I think there are things that David Bell does well. But if we're talking about the level of concern, I am more concerned about David Bell, right? So let's see if we can project volume for David Bell, and potentially that volume could outweigh the separation concerns, right? However, and I think too, when it comes down to landing spot and figuring out David Bell, is he paired with a quarterback that anticipates well? Is he paired with a quarterback that puts the ball in the place where his receivers and only his receivers can get the ball? Or is he playing with a gunslinger, jump ball, 50-50 guy that may not throw David Bell open as often and help him progress along? So I think it's legitimate here to be concerned about David Bell to a degree. However, also keep in mind at this point, you're paying an early second round value on David Bell. Drake London may end up being an early first round premium. So there's a valuation that comes with that as well. So kind of just working through that question there, more concerned about David Bell, less concerned about Drake London. However, both of these concerns are very legitimate. All right, let's jump on to the next one, coming in from Charm City Kev, of course, from the Patreon Discord as well. Does the Jamison Williams injury affect your ranking of him for the future? It's a very good question. I wanted to bring it up on the podcast, even though I am almost not going to give a real answer. It depends. It depends on if the NFL cares about it. All right, because I think I get the crux of Kev's question here, right? He's asking, should we really be assessing a long-term discount for an injury that is going to most likely, cause cut out maybe 2 months, maybe the entire, even if it's his entire rookie season that Jamison Williams isn't at 100%, should we be giving a long-term dynasty discount to a player, to a wide receiver here that could have been, a top 1, 2, 3 wide receiver selection? Right now, it seems like he could fall into that 4, 5, 6 range for wide receivers in this class. There's a couple ways I feel about this, and this is why I said, I'm not ready to give a real answer yet. Does the NFL care? If Jamison Williams is still a top 20 pick, then he is still going to hold his current projection and current RBBR, rookie big board rating, because NFL draft capital does project into my rankings, or to my ratings. However, also a big part of the rookie big board rankings, rating as well, is projection. And it's short-term projection, it's 1-year projection, and it's long-term projection, it's 3-year projection. And here's where it's crucial, and here's where I think it is legitimate if you want to bump Jamison Williams down because of the injury. You call it legitimate, you call it illegitimate. Dynasty players are not patient, right? And so if Jamison Williams is not on the field right away, if he's not healthy right away, he's going to produce less, in his first year, which lowers my 1 year projection for him. And folks are going to pivot off of him quickly, which is going to lower his value. It's going to lower what you can trade him for, what you can flip him for. You could be in a situation here where if you're drafting Jamison Williams, and again, we're not sure what the injury timeline is, we're not sure when he's going to be able to be back and be healthy, but if we could potentially be, sitting on him after his rookie season, waiting for that second year, and then the question becomes, what is hitting in your second year look like at the wide receiver position here? Are folks going to be willing to be patient? Something tells me at this point next year, Jamison Williams is going to be cheaper than whatever you're paying for him in rookie drafts this year, and so it's a little bit of a tricky situation here. However, right now, Jamison Williams is wide receiver 6 for me. Very tight tier. I'm telling you, the entire top 6 guys are very tight right now. So if he ends up going after pick 20 in the NFL draft, he will move down my rankings. And if it lands with the injury that I can't project a significant portion of the season for him to play, he will move down in my rankings. So yes, I think it is legitimate to let the injury happen. It hasn't affected his ranking in the big board yet. However, we know that post-draft plug-in is when we will really be able to project with confidence the rankings. So we'll see what happens when we get to that point. All right, question number 3 here coming in from Zags DFF from the Patreon Discord. Which running backs in the class could be 3-down backs if they land in the right system? This is a really good question here. Certainly when you think of a 3-down back, it's fantastic for fantasy football because you're going to get high volume, and we know how important it is for that running back to have involvement in the passing game, right? That's part of the reason Najee Harris was a top 5 running back. It was part of the reason that I was banging the table that Najee Harris would be a running back 1 his rookie season, and nobody believed me. I shouldn't say nobody. There were folks that faded that notion. It seemed so easy to project for me. You look at DeAndre Swift. It was one of the reasons that you were able to project DeAndre Swift to be a running back 1, and certainly despite missing time, he was well on his way to be a running back 1 in the passing game, because of his contribution to the passing game. So I think this is a really good question. Who can be on the field for all 3 backs? And I want to, I don't want to just read off the kind of the top guys in the rankings here. So I want to give kind of a range of different guys who could potentially see that. One is Kyren Williams. I do think that if Kyren Williams is able to be a top 100 draft pick, he has the potential to land in an offense here where he can be a 3-down back, and it's because he's fantastic in pass protection. He has really solid hands, and I think he runs really well in between the tackles. So I think Kyren Williams is a guy who certainly could have that potential impact to be a 3-down back in that situation. If we're moving down the board a little bit here, and again, just trying to give kind of a variety of different guys that could be potential 3-down backs. You look down at the board, a guy like Jashaun Corbin, who I think right now could be a day 3 selection, but we've seen day 3 running backs consistently, find workhorse, for lack of a better word, workhorse type roles in the NFL, right? And so Jashaun Corbin, he didn't get a lot of volume because he missed some time with transfer and injury, but he's explosive. He has great hands. He can get to the second level of the field quickly. I think he's going to be a huge day 3 steal for an NFL roster. So that's giving a little bit of range there for the running back positions. And Anthony also asked, or Zags also asked me to go ahead and give some possible landing spots, right? Some possible systems that could allow that. And I think, we could really get into the nuance of running back situations and scheme and fit. It's difficult to do that, but instead, if you look at just some teams that could really present volume type opportunities, you have to look at the Houston Texans, right? If Kyren Williams lands with the Houston Texans in day 2, he's got most likely David Mills, who's going to dump the ball off to him. So that there could be that PPR type possibility here, that safety net running back. Certainly, he'd step right in there as the running back, taking over the backfield as the most talented running back in that room. You look at Arizona. If Arizona moves on from James Conner or even just gives him a reduced role. A guy like Jashaun Corbin as a third-round pick. We've seen Arizona kind of go cheaper at the running back position. I think Jashaun Corbin could potentially land in Arizona, and I actually think that's an interesting fit because I think he has a similar skill set to what James Conner can bring to the table, except he's much more explosive at this point in his career, and I think potentially brings even better hands. So some potential three-down running backs that aren't just at the top of my board. I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a range there. All right, this is potentially my favorite question here. This one's coming in from Gibson. I gave Gibson a double dip because I love this question so much. So this is asking essentially, is Chris Olave this year's Justin Jefferson? And I'm going to pull up the full quote here because I think it's important. So Gibson asked, again in the Patreon Discord, is Olave this draft season's Justin Jefferson? In the sense that he's been slighted by the fantasy football community by not being mentioned when discussing who the best wide receiver in this rookie class is. One, I want to point out that I did not pay Gibson for this question. All right. Chris Olave is my wide receiver 2. I'm very high on Chris Olave. Chris Olave is not this year's Justin Jefferson. And now it would be fun for me to say that. However, and so just as a little bit of context for folks who may not have been listening for multiple years now, I was very high on Justin Jefferson. I projected him to be the wide receiver 1 of his rookie class in terms of production. However, and this is the key, this is where I'm drawing the distinction here, that Chris Olave is not this year's Justin Jefferson. I projected Justin Jefferson to be the wide receiver 1 in his rookie season production after the NFL draft. After the NFL draft. And so what Justin Jefferson's situation was a very talented wide receiver. He was not my highest rated wide receiver from tape. However, when I plugged him into his system in my projections, I was able to look past a run-heavy offense and see that the opportunity that Justin Jefferson was going to have in the skill set that he brought to the table matched very, very well. And it was only after the NFL draft that I pushed Justin Jefferson to the level that I did. Now, Chris Olave is much more reminiscent to me of this year's Jalen Waddle, where Chris Olave, similar to Jalen Waddle, has been so good for so long in college football that the film community has gotten bored of him. Now, you add that extra year, it turned off the analytics community. So I think in a similar way where the analytics community was turned off from Jalen Waddle for different reasons, right? Market share, all that. But Jalen Waddle was very good for a long time in college football. To a sense, right, the film community got a little bored of Jalen Waddle because, he got injured early in the season and he was the hottest at the beginning of the season. Then he got injured. And so then, it was kind of a little off and on. And and then it was Devonta Smith time. And so I think that Olave to me, I like him so much because of his film specifically. He's my wide receiver 2 right now in a super talented wide receiver class. But he's just sliding down. He's sliding down because people want to be excited about Treylon Burks. I get it. People want to be excited about Garrett Wilson. Totally fair. People want to be excited about Drake London. We've touched on that. Totally fine. Totally okay. But if that continues to push Chris Olave's value down to the back end of the first round, to the early second round in Superflex leagues, all day. Please let it happen. Please let Chris Olave's value fall. I would love it because I'm going to scoop him up just like I scooped up Justin Jefferson 2 years ago, just like I scooped up Jalen Waddle last year. I have made a ton of fantasy football value off letting these talented wide receivers slip, right? And so, but when I'm thinking about the why, I think it's closer to Jalen Waddle than it is Justin Jefferson because it's pre-draft. I am high on Chris Olave as a top 2 wide receiver, top 3 wide receiver pre-draft because of his college tape and college skill set. Now, we have to see what happens post-draft. But Justin Jefferson, I was high on him. He was my wide receiver 4, I believe, pre-draft. And then I saw post-draft that I was able to plug his skill set into opportunity, right? It's not just about skill set. It's about opportunity for fantasy football. So Great question. I love it. I know I rambled a little bit on that one, but it's because I wanted to draw that distinction there. Chris Olave's value is trending much closer to Jalen Waddle's than Justin Jefferson's. All right. This is another really great question here. I believe it's the last question coming in from Nate the Red 89 here. When you are drafting early in a rebuild, do you want to draft quantity or quality? So this is specifically talking about a rookie draft, and this is a really good strategy question to kind of cap off this mailbag episode here. So when you're drafting early in a rookie rebuild, right? So essentially, like, you're rebuilding your roster. It's early on in the rebuild. It's year one in the rebuild, and you have the draft picks there. Would you rather have a quality of draft pick or a quantity of draft picks? Now, the easy answer here is I could cop out and I could say, oh, it depends on the class, right? Oh, if there's a Jamar Chase in the class, but Jamar Chase didn't go 101, so maybe not even. If there's a Trevor Lawrence in the class, oh, you want the 101, you want the quality. In a rebuild, I want the quantity. And so, especially if this year's draft, right? Say I took an orphan over and I had the 101, and I ended up with the 108, and then your second round pick, third round pick, fourth round pick. I'm trading back from that 101. I'm trying to get the 106 in the 210. I'm trying to get the the 110 and then the first round pick next year. But here's where I would specifically target. And I actually, you can go look at some of my rebuild rosters I picked up an orphan that I did this with already this offseason. What I'm doing is I'm going after second round picks. I'm flipping my vets for second round picks. I'm flipping my bottom of the roster feeders there for third round picks. Because when you take over an orphan, right, or a rebuild, it's a lot of players that you don't like. I'm not progressing forward with a roster of players that I don't like. I will sell them off for those second round picks, because then what you're doing is you are building a roster of guys that you believe in, right? We know second round guys hit. We know third round rookie guys hit, right? And so build up this roster, give yourself more opportunities to hit. And then what you can do is either flip those players once they hit and return the value that way. You can have this core roster of young guys. So I would actually take the quantity over the quality. Now, I should preface this by saying usually in my dynasty leagues, my rosters are at the minimum 25 plus taxi squad. Oftentimes I'm playing closer to 30 plus taxi squad. And you just end up, in these orphans, you just end up having these players that you have no interest on. You have no idea why anybody even took a shot on this. I don't know, maybe this guy had like one good week 2 years ago and the previous owner was holding on to them and obviously not doing a good job because they orphaned up their team. So I want to get rid of the last guy. I want to make my team, put my impression on it. Let me get some of my guys on there. And guess what? All right, if that orphan team, it's probably going to take a couple of years to hit. But if you can hit on your third round or fourth round pick, then you're going to have some fun along the way while you're probably taking 8 losses in your first year, right? So there's a little bit of strategy here, but just a little bit of fantasy football fun. Give me the quantity over the quality. Keep trading back, get those second round picks, give yourself third round hits. And once you get to the draft, everybody else gets bored, right? All the players that don't really dig into the rookie, not us. If you're listening to this video, you love your fourth round rookie picks most likely, right? Everybody else is trading off their picks. I'll take those fourth round picks. Just let me take some stabs at my guys. Let me draft my guys. And it's an orphan roster. You're probably going to flip over those vets anyways, cut them at some point in the season for a waiver wire ad. So why not just go ahead and take some shots on your guys, right? All right, so that's the first Rookie Big Board mailbag. Like I said, if you want to get in on the next one here, drop a comment on the YouTube channel, or of course, the easiest way is you could go ahead and join the Rookie Big Board community there, patreon.com/thefFeducator. You can get in on the Rookie Big Board Discord, as well as get access to all my rookie rankings. And guess what? We're chopping it up in the Discord. You don't have to wait to the next mailbag. We're chopping it up, asking questions. They're a very active group, 7 days a week, 24/7. So make sure to go ahead and jump into that. And as always, I appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.